And the interesting thing about time is, boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, somebody at some point, when God made Adam and Eve, well, he must have been the backbone of it, because he did give one reference to time. Remember, it says God created the earth in 6 days, right? Or on the seventh day he rested. So he did give a reference to somebody making those references in those times, but there's a whole bunch of... The reason that time sometimes can be confusing, because time... Wouldn't it have not been easier if somebody would said, let's make 10 seconds to make a minute, 10 minutes to make an hour, 10 hours makes a day, 10 days makes a week, 10 weeks makes a year. Because when you deal with tens, it's really easy to deal with, but we don't have that with time. We've got all of these gobbledygook things. Let's write these down just so we know it. Our smallest unit of measurement right here is a second. Okay, but we know that it takes 60 seconds equals 1 minute. And it makes you wonder why they pick these exact words for whatever it is. Get rid of this. All right. And then we put 60 minutes together. And somebody said, let's call that an hour. And then we put 24 hours together, and we end up getting our 1 day. Now there is a reason why, we make a day. The day happens to be when the sun comes up and goes down. What is the event that causes the day? What happens every day? One thing, something happens once in a day. What is the one thing that happens in the day that makes our day a day? Actually, it's not exact. Or it's close. Well, it's pretty close. Exactly. Actually, it's probably pretty close. What is it, Caleb?
The sun.
What?
The sun.
The sun does what in a day? Well, we do. We have day and night. But what event happens once in a day? James?
You wake up.
You do. So that's why we called it a day, because you wake up. Do you know if you were locked in a room and never saw sun or night, and somebody says, just wake up when you feel like, wake up and sleep when you feel like sleeping, your whole body clock would change to something different. I'm not sure what it would be, but it would change. What happens in the day, Katarina?
I was going to say that there is a metric time.
There is? What is it?
It's where there's 100 minutes in an hour.
I've not heard of that.
But they're smaller. There's a smaller amount of time. It's a smaller amount of
Isn't
time.
it? If you could bring me a paper on that, I'd love to hear about that. I didn't know the metric system. David, what happens in a day?
Sunrise.
The sun rises and sets, which means what happens? Anybody? Grayson?
You go to sleep.
No, it's an event that cannot and does not change, children. You keep giving me something. You could go to bed or you don't have to get up in a day. A day, ladies and gentlemen, is the amount of time it takes the Earth to rotate 1 time. That means our Earth spins around on its axis. In 1 day, it goes a complete turn in 1 day. That's why we have time zones. There are 24 time zones, because every hour we shift our time enough so that everybody's kind of on the same time. It takes 1 day for the Earth to spin on its axis 1 time. See how in 1 day that thing will come all the way back. And that's why you get day and night, is because the Earth stands still over here and the Earth spins like this. And you get day as long as part of you is facing that sun, you get day. Then it becomes night, because then you're on the opposite side of the Earth, and then it becomes day again. So that's what happens. Then we have a couple odd sort of things. We have 7 days equals 1 week. Oh wait, that's 2 weeks. Sorry about that. And then more or less 52, but we usually go with this. If you string 365 days together, we get 1 year. Now, the book will call this a common year, and I'll tell you why in a second here. You get a common year. Okay, now, what happens, ladies and gentlemen, in the time frame of a year? 1 day is how long it takes the Earth to spin once around this. What happens in 1 year? Why do we make it a year? Why do we have seasons? Why is all that happening here? What happens in 1 year? Sam?
The Earth on the Earth goes around the sun.
Yeah. In 1 year, that's the amount of time it takes the Earth to travel around the sun. Okay, which means this. Let's get my little, I need a bigger one. I need a big one for, well, anyway. Let's say my fist is the sun. Okay, while the Earth is spinning like this, it is also revolving around the sun. And it takes a whole year for it to start here and go all the way around, just take a whole trip around the sun and end up back where it comes from. Technically, I believe it takes a little bit longer than that, and that's why every 3 years, is it every 4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every 4 years we have a 366th day year, and that's what we call a leap year. And that leap year is, what day do we stick in there? February 29th. And to me, because I suppose we have to throw this in there too, we also throw in there that there are 12 months in 1 year. But the problem with months is that they're all different days. Some have 30, some have 31, and one has 28, so it gets to be kind of goofy. Whoever did the months, wouldn't it have just been nice for them to say, hey, let's take 365 and divide it by 12. What would you get? 3. Everybody get 30. I guess you get half the days, we get 31. What would it be? 365 divided by 12 is 3, which is 36. It's 30 days, and then there's 5/12. So 5 of the months would get 30 days, but the rest, the other 5, wait, we have a remainder 5 days. So 5 months would have to have 31 days, and 7 months would have to have 30 days. But we decided not to do that. We had another long thought. Anyway, enough of that. Somebody have a question out there? Now, once, yes, please.
Why are there different time zones? Why can't we just have like the same time?
Well, if you did not have different time zones, Grayson, what would happen is 1 o'clock in the afternoon here on the United States, it would be, the sun would be all the way up there, but if across on the opposite end of the world, 1 o'clock in the afternoon would be pitch black.
Oh.
Because 1 o'clock in the afternoon over there, so that you keep the same daylight hours, you have to keep switching the things. Well, it's just so that everybody has sunlight at the same time of the day. Your days are actually daylights and your nights are actually nights. So that's just what they do. Otherwise, everything gets all messed up. Now, keeping going with that, when we put 10 years together, we get a decade. If we put 100 years together, we get a century. And if we put 1,000 years together, we get a, anybody? Millennium. See, kids, I was privileged enough to be alive, and actually relatively still pretty old, in the year 1999, 1999. You guys probably weren't born then, but the beautiful thing was, when it was 1999 and you got to December 31st, and you got there, you know, when we got to January 1st the next day, not only were we starting a new decade and a new century, but we were also starting a whole new millennium, because we started a whole new 1,000 years, which doesn't happen. You guys won't be alive to start a new millennium, because you'll be lucky to get to another, wait, what were you born?
2009.
So if you make it to year 2109, then you would make it to a new century. Well, if you make it to the year 2100, You'd have to be 91 years old to get there, to turn into a century. Decades come
Well,
off
I could
easy
do that.
because they're best
Do
there,
that.
but- And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have to talk about the AM and PM times. So write these down. Uh-oh, got it on for 11. You got a lot of them here.
Oh my god.
I'll let you give you a chance to write those down. Now, in case you get these mixed up, like kids your age may or may not, a new day starts at 12 o'clock a.m. We call this midnight. And all good boys and girls should be asleep at midnight.
Not on New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, maybe you stay up there.
Yeah, I stay up till like 5.
Not on the weekend.
That means all of these times, you know, if you wake up at 6 or 7 o'clock, that's about right here.
Yeah.
But these are all the morning hours, if we think about it that way. 9, 10, 11, right now we're at 9:15, is that, no, wait, 10, what time is it, 10:15? Right now we're right about here, 10:15 or so. 12 o'clock p.m. is noon. And then we start the afternoon hours, and usually we call, you know, anything after 6 o'clock, usually are nighttime hours. And maybe it's different for you, I'm just saying generally you can pick whatever you want. Now, because, you know, if I told you to come to my house at 3 o'clock, there are 2 of them up there, okay? We usually assume it's the one that's more logical, but that's not always the case, and that's why we also have what's called military time. Because when you're in the military, a lot of the stuff that the Army and the military and the Marines and all do can happen at night or in the morning. You know, if they're having a surprise attack at whatever, you know, they're going to do it, you know, at 3 in the morning or whatever it is. To prevent confusion on the time, they don't go or do it like this. What they do is they start at 12 a.m. as being what they call 0-100 hours. And all the rest go the same. You have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 900, 1200. But then they just keep adding it up. So 1200 hours is noon. And then 1300 would be the same as 1 o'clock. This would be 1400 hours, 1500 hours, 1600 hours, 17, 18, 19, 20, 2100 hours, 2200 hours, 2300 hours, and then you got going back to that. So they just, when they get to 12, instead of stopping and going back to 1, they just keep adding 12, 13, 14, 15. So that, you know, that way when you're, you know, your sergeant tells you to be somewhere at, you know, 600 hours, you know that it is 6 o'clock in the morning. If they tell you to be at 1800 hours, you know that's 12 plus 6, 1800 hours. And that's what, if you ever see military time, a lot of times you'll watch it, they'll ask you if you want to be in military time or whatever. That's just so you can't be confused. You don't want, and when you're in the military, you don't want to make a mistake by 12 hours at a time because things bad things will happen there. Jameson?
My dad's truck, he has a clock on it,
And it's in military
and
time?
it's a military, and when I look at it, I have to
Right, all you have to do is, if you don't understand it, like if it says 1,500 hours, is just take 12 away from that 15, so that's 3 o'clock. Just take 12 away and you're good. Grayson?
Is that why in England they have it goes up to 24?
Probably, if that's what the English people do. Maybe not. And then, ladies and gentlemen, write this down because we got so much more to do. If you're talking about elapsed time, and this is where when I said, if our time would be in 10 seconds to a minute and 10 minutes into an hour, this would be a lot easier. But if I asked you this question, let me see what the question would be. The movie starts at 3:15 and ended at 5 o'clock. The movie starts at 3:15 and ends at 5 o'clock. How long was the movie? Okay. There is no easy way to do this mathematically, well there is and there isn't, but really the best way for you to do this is kind of to draw it out like this. The movie started at 3:15, and we want to know how long it takes to get from 3:15 to 5 o'clock. Well, the best way to do it is to think about how many minutes would it take to get to 4 o'clock. To go from 3:15 to 4 o'clock is 45 minutes. And then to go from 4 o'clock to the 5 o'clock is how long? An hour. Well, I would just make it an hour. So how long would the movie be? Well, it'd be the hour plus the 45 minutes, which you just say 1 hour, 45 minutes. That's really the simplest way to do it. I can tell you how to do it. It is a subtraction problem, but watch, if you do it as a subtraction problem, this is how it works. Here's your subtracting. This is how we would do it if it was normal numbers. But this is where the problem comes in. I can't take 5 from 0 or 1 from that, so I have to do like normal subtraction and borrow, correct? Yes, Mr. Hahn, that's correct. But the thing is, time is not made into tens. 1 hour is how many minutes? 60 minutes. So when you borrow from the 5, okay, you don't just make this a 1 because everything's not built on the tens. Then you have to say now this is 60 minutes because you're taking 1 hour from here and putting it to there. Then you can do the subtraction, which means then you have to borrow again. This does become a 5, and now there are that many minutes. You get 45 minutes, and you get 1 hour, 45 minutes. So to me, it's just easier for you to do it like this because we don't have those tens that we're working with all the time. It just gets a little goofy. And then if you'd open your books to page 172, please. I just want to make sure. Looking at example number 2, it says, according to this calendar, June 8, 2014 is what day of the week? You just have to find the number 8 there for June. 8 falls under, what's the second S? Yeah, calendars start with Sunday. Sunday is supposed to be the first day of the week. Usually we think of Monday because that's the day you go back to school. But the last day of the week is Saturday, the first day of the week is Sunday. Now wait, one more thing. Take a look at page 181. 181. I know it's in the future here, but I want to show you. Problem number 23 on page 181. Do you see it there? If the book asks you, it says, according to this calendar, what was the date of the third Sunday in May in 1957? Well, what is the third Sunday date? Look at the Sundays. Sundays was either the 5th, the 12th, the 19th, or the 26th. Which one's the third one?
19.
But you can't just write the 19th because they asked you for the date. Your answer for that would have to be May 19th, and then you'd also have to give the year 1957. So make sure you give the whole part of the date if they ask you for the date. Very well then. All right, for assignment, what do we got? Lesson 28. Lesson 28.